Joining us now is the congressman who actually represents all of the Everglades there, Alligator Alcatraz, and all the constituents on both sides of that coast. Mario Diaz-Balart, great to have you on the program.
Good to see you, Glenna.
So let's start there. Dismantling well underway because of a judge's order. Alligator Alcatraz is about to be no more. Let's just start really wide open. Your thoughts on that, on the order to dismantle?
Look, we have very strong institutions in our country, and that's a good thing. And the courts have spoken, and therefore you should follow what the courts have ruled. It's pretty evident while it was open, the president is trying to stop the problem created by the Biden administration, where we don't know if it's 20 million or more people that came in across the southern border, brought in by the cartels and the narco cartels, and with no vetting. And so, obviously, the president and the administration is being as aggressive as possible. I think I laud some of their efforts. I disagree with others, but again, we have very strong institutions, and I think you're seeing democracy in action.
So the purpose of this absolutely was to support the mass deportation plan of President Trump. A lot of the critics who actually are in support of the actual process, a lot of the criticism came, why there? There are so many more places, including you see now Fort Bliss in Texas, the North Florida, #2 detention center for the state. There are places with infrastructure better to handle the process. What was, in your mind, why a temporary facility in the middle of the Everglades there?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's never a good place for a detention facility. And I mean, you know that. Nobody wants it in their backyard. You don't want it in residential areas. You don't necessarily want it on military bases because it potentially could jeopardize the readiness. So there's no good place for it. My biggest concern, by the way, was making sure that the Miccosukis who use the lands around those, historically they've used those lands around that facility to make sure that they were not impacted. Obviously, any potential impact also to the environment. I will tell you, whether one agrees or disagrees with this facility, it was done really quickly. It was done responsibly. I visited it. I didn't do a dog and pony show. I went by myself. I went to visit. I spent some time looking at the conditions, looking at the facilities. And so you have to commend the folks who put it together for doing a really a good job. Now, is there a good place for something like that? No. We have to remember, it's a detention facility. It's in essence a minimum security prison. And the standards of that facility, like the other facilities that I've seen around the country, are so much better than they were during, for example, the Obama administration. We all remember those scenes of during the Obama administration, detainees sleeping on the floor with those reflective blankets. That was not the case in this facility. They had bunks, but again, Glenna, it was a detention facility. The courts have spoken, and I think that just shows you how viable and how strong our institutions are. We will move forward.
We had, just throwing out there, that we really have been trying to vet so many different and varying stories of what went on inside. I'm not sure anyone ever got a verifiable look at some of those allegations, but I want to talk about, you're a money guy, you're in appropriations. You brought home a lot of money for the Everglades. $218 million spent on Alligator Alcatraz, state money. Whether that ever was to come back as reimbursement from FEMA, I'm not sure that was ever decided. But as we sit here, $218 million spent. Your perspective on that, was it a worthy investment gone wrong, or a waste of money? I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, if it's shut down, and then the answer is no, that it wasn't a good place or a good decision to do it there. Again, we have a governor who I'm a big fan of, who does things rather quickly. And we saw that after every storm, how despite all the experts saying things were going to take, months and weeks or years to put together a new bridge that collapsed, this is a governor who does things quickly. This was done quickly because they saw a national need. I'm never going to criticize any government for doing things quickly and doing them well, by the way. Now, again, in hindsight, when you do have courts that have a say, well, I guess you can never predict what a court is going to do. But the question is there ever a good place to put a detention facility? Now, two things about that. Well, three things. Number one, I heard all those horror stories about the conditions. That was just not true. I visited, I saw, I've seen conditions. By the way, our troops, when they're, sent to different parts of the world, have much more difficult living conditions than this detention facility. So, number one. Number two, was the food rotten, things like that? Absolutely, that is not the case. Number three, the folks that were complaining a lot never complained when Obama had really bad conditions. And number four, and again, all of these conditions equally important. Those people that are complaining, I'd like to have a different alternative. Where do they want to do it? I mean, I'll tell you what, I sure don't want a facility like this anywhere in my district. And a lot of these, including members who came down here and complain about this facility and have complained about other facilities where they are. And by the way, that's not an unreasonable complaint. Well, what are your options? Where are your alternatives?
Right, we're actually going to be seeing what those alternatives are fairly soon. But one more question before we go on to something bigger, and it's kind of a segue because I'm just going to go out there and say you are a member of Congress who has really stepped up to work very hard on immigration compromise for many, many years. Not done even as we speak, but you were on there looking for national security and humanitarian ways to improve the process. And the due process of the people who are being held not only in Alcatraz, but in other places around the country during these mass deportations has really come under scrutiny because what many people call illegal aliens are people in this country who are not citizens, but who are here going through a certain legal process, like TPS, like asylum requests, who have been swept up and are being held, and some we know even deported before their process has come due. Weigh in on that for me.
Well, look, my position on TPS for whether it's Venezuelans, Nicaraguans has not changed. I mean, I don't think you can send folks back to those countries until there is freedom and some basic human rights. And so I'm talking about Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. There may be others, North Korea, whatever. My position has not changed. Number one. Again, on
but
the issue.
Let me interrupt you there for a moment because not on the concept of TPS, but on the concept of people who are being deported, rounded up and deported without being able to go through whatever due process they are here going through. Have you talked to the administration? Has DHS or the Trump administration acknowledged that there needs to be a way to let people who are in a legal process finish before being deported anywhere?
So two things. Again, my Republican colleagues and I have talked multiple times to both the administration and different parts of the administration at the highest levels. And we've been very clear that we'd like to create a process, which, by the way, doesn't exist and was totally destroyed by President Biden's administration, particularly for folks who come from countries where there's potentially a larger chance of having legitimate claims, political claims, right? So here's the problem, Glenna, that during the Biden administration, millions upon millions of people were brought in by the narco cartels because it was worse than Biden opening up the border. He gave control of the southern border to the narco cartels, right? They decided who and what came in at what price. None of those people were truly vetted. None of them were truly vetted. They were just brought in ahead of people who have been waiting and continue to wait in line to try to come legally to the United States. So it's a clear violation of the rule of law, but it's also a clear problem for the national security of the United States. This administration is facing and has faced that crisis, and they're doing everything they can. What we're trying to come up with, and what we're working and continue to talk with the administration is what I just mentioned. If you come from certain countries, there's logic will tell you that there's a greater chance that you have a credible, a real, not a false one, asylum claim. And during the Biden administration, that didn't exist. We're trying to see if this administration can fix that aspect while we look at doing more, at least that aspect that was further destroyed by the Biden administration. We keep talking. We have not been able to successfully achieve that yet, but we are working on that. And so I have the choice of screaming and getting political points and getting nothing done, or what I have done consistently, and I've not changed my position, is getting things done, working with folks, whoever's in control, working with them to try to achieve success. We're working. We're still having conversations. Can I tell you that we've achieved it? No. Can I tell you that I think we're days away from achieving it? No. Do I think it's possible? Yes, it is. Precisely because Maria Elvira Salazar, and Carlos Jimenez and I are working as opposed to this just doing dog and ponies, which I don't want to be critical, but a lot of members of Congress and a lot of elected officials love doing dog and ponies. Some of us actually try to get things done, and that's what we're working to try to get done.
All right, well, as a member of the press, I've been invited to a lot of dog and pony shows by a lot of my friends who are elected. Congressman, can you just sit tight for 2 minutes? I really need to take a break, but I do want to talk about some news about Venezuelan TPS and also the firing of the director of the Centers for Disease Control when we come right back. We are back with Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart. We're talking about immigration in a broad sense. Congressman, though, on Friday, a federal appeals court upheld a lower court's decision that TPS for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans in particular cannot be blocked by the Trump administration, paving the way. Good news for those people who are here on TPS, although still a bit of, a yo-yo feeling, a lot of uncertainty. I know you are big in favor of temporary protected status, especially for people from Venezuela, for Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haitians as well.
Yes, and Haitians as well. Look, TPS is a legal issue. It's a legal process. And I support TPS for those that you just mentioned because of the specific, very unique circumstances in those countries, which is why TPS is in law. It's a legal process. And again, the courts have spoken. And however, I still believe that we do need to create a more permanent process, legal process, and which is why, as I mentioned before, we're in conversations. We'll continue to be in conversations with the Trump administration. Now, obviously, when it comes to particularly Venezuela and Cuba, Nicaragua, the biggest solution, what would solve all the problems and the national security issues of the United States would be for the regimes in those countries to no longer be there. But in the absence of that, I'm going to continue to work on whether there are temporary fixes to deal with the folks who are here.
Well, let me segue right off of that answer. I'll talk a little bit more about Venezuela. As we speak, U.S. warships are anchored off the north coast. This administration considers Nicolas Maduro not only an illegitimate head of Venezuela, but also a narco-terrorist. There is a $50 million bounty on his head as we speak. Would you be in favor of doing something like a Manuel Noriega from 1990 Part 2, have U.S. military invade Venezuela and take Nicolas Maduro back to the United States to face justice? Is that something you would support?
Well, look, the president has been very clear that he's not going to tolerate these cartels that have been responsible for the deaths of actually millions of Americans. He's declared war on these narco cartels. They are terrorist organizations. And this is a president who eliminated ISIS, a terrorist organization, because it was a threat. This is a president who eliminated Soleimani, the Iranian thug who was responsible for the murder of Americans. So whatever our president decides to do in order to stop the murder of Americans, protect American citizens, in how he deals with these terrorist threats, these terrorists, I wholeheartedly support. So
that question hangs still out there. President Trump comes to you, Congressman, and says, should we go in and take him? What do you think?
I know that President Trump is very serious about protecting American lives. He also is very serious about not starting and stopping wars, but he has used our U.S. military effectively in order to protect American lives. He did it more recently, by the way, with that incredible, I think remarkable bombing of the nuclear site in Iran. He's done it with ISIS. He's done it in other occasions. I support him going after these cartels. These cartels have, in essence, killed more people than all the other, more known terrorist groups, killed more Americans than all these other more known terrorist groups. So whether it's El Cartel de los Soles, which is the one headed by Maduro, or others, this president is serious in dismantling the leadership and going after them. It's to protect American lives, and I wholeheartedly support what he's doing.
All right, I'm going to leave that there. And one more before I let you go. This week, the firing of Centers for Disease Control Director really stirred up a lot of drama, and I'm wondering if you would weigh in. It's health and science has become part of politics. That is just reality. Are you concerned that the American public, South Florida viewers, don't know whether or whom to trust when it comes to their health, to their vaccine decisions? Is this something that is really going to put a wrench in public health, faith in public health policy?
I think what really really created uncertainty and lack of faith was during the Biden years, the whole Fauci thing and the whole issue with COVID and how they were just doing things that seemed either arbitrarily or for political reasons. And now, our young people in particular are suffering the consequences of that. This administration is trying to deal with that. Now, I don't really have much knowledge about this woman who was recently fired because, as you know, she was just very recently confirmed. So I've had no dealings with her. I don't have much of an opinion because I just don't know enough. I will tell you what this administration is trying to do is keep Americans healthy and safe, and trying to kind of redo the damage caused by the 4 years. And I don't know of a worse example of mishandling, of politicization, of doing things arbitrarily and with zero transparency than the whole Fauci phenomena or the Fauci fiasco of the Biden years. That's what this administration is dealing with. I wish I could realistically tell you more about what happened in this case, because I just don't know this individual, have not met her, don't know why she got fired. But obviously, I hope to have more information in the next few weeks and months.
Understood. The politics at play on going both ways. President Trump was actually in his first administration. He was the one who was responsible for getting the COVID vaccine rolled out so expeditiously, Operation Warp Speed. That was the president's program.
It was, and it worked really, really well. What did not work really, really well was after that, and the insistence on masking without having the science we now know, particularly with children. The insistence that vaccine was going to make it so that nobody else could get it, which is just scientifically wasn't the case. The denial that China had anything to do with this virus. It's pretty clear that it came out of Wuhan, and it's pretty clear that it came out of the Wuhan Institute that studies this virus. But if you even question that, you were called a conspiracy theorist, etc. We got to put all of that behind us. That's what the administration is trying to do. But again, I don't like to talk about things if I don't have the facts. I don't have the facts as to why this individual person was let go. But obviously, I hope to have more facts as weeks in the next few weeks.
Understood, 100%. And I always appreciate you and your insights and your perspectives. And I thank you for being with us on Labor Day weekend.
Always a pleasure. Always good to see you.
Thanks.